Hi, Cancer. Let's talk about the incredible astrology of February 2026 and what it signifies for you. I have a chart here for February 1st. There's a full moon in Leo on this day that I want to talk about. But first, I actually want to start with a transit that began in late January. On January 26th, Neptune entered Aries. We're talking here about your 10th house, which relates to work, career, and public image. If you're retired or a student, I sometimes see themes around public image show up here, but if you're looking for work or working, usually work and career themes are the most present for the 10th. Saturn is going to move into this house and sign this month too, and into a conjunction with Neptune. Neptune is going to be here in Aries until 2038 now. So I thought it deserved a little bit of an explanation and some time and attention all by itself. Neptune moving into this house and sign for you suggests, Cancer, that you're creating something brand new when it comes to your work and career. You're probably someone who's quite pioneering anyway, with Aries ruling this part of your chart. Now, this signature might just be kind of activating that energy on a whole other level. You are fine with doing something that you've never done before. Maybe even doing something at work that you've never seen anyone do before. The world is changing so much around us. It's such a new era that we're beginning to enter into here. And that's affecting our lives, the way we communicate, our relationships, our work. And I think Neptune moving into this house and sign suggests you may really begin to create something very, very new during this time. You don't necessarily feel like you have it all planned out now, but you are feeling enthusiastic and inspired. There's sort of a transcendence possible with Neptune moving through this part of your chart, blurring of boundaries. You're likely able to see solutions that you've never seen before, connect with people in a way that you haven't before. There's sort of a blending of you and others possible at this time, and either even of you and your work. All of this Neptune energy can be a little disorienting, especially at first. And it is good to keep in mind that we're just talking about the very beginning of this transit here. It's going to unfold for over a decade. So you might just be getting the little first hints of it here at first. And that's why it might be a little disorienting. February is a great time, Cancer, as you'll see as we continue to work through this reading. It's a great time to be kind of loose and a little more open minded than maybe you have been in the past. Not that you weren't before, but it's just that things are moving and changing so much now that it might make it a little easier for those changes to land, for the new information to make sense. If you sort of let go a little bit and open up to learning some new things this month, feeling some different ways. This Leo full moon on February 1st is actually falling into a house related to career as well for you, Cancer. This full moon in Leo is occurring in your second house. The second house relates to your earnings and your values. It's all about the things you sort of value most. We all sort of appreciate the value of money. We use it to pay the rent, buy food, and other things have value to us as well. Time with loved ones, downtime to relax. Do often see themes around time show up in the second house as well. But because your earnings are here, I just think it's a little bit significant with all this change happening in your 10th house right now. A full moon in this sign happens every year, but it can mark sort of a culmination of efforts over the course of the last 6 months, sort of a time when things come together or come to fruition. And you're able to see sort of the fruits of your efforts and then make plans and adjustments for the next 6 months based on that. This is an exciting year in 2026 for this part of the chart. The nodes will be shifting into Leo Aquarius soon, and over the summer, Jupiter will enter Leo as well. So, sort of a lot coming up here. Now is sort of a moment to look back at where you've been, what you've been doing here lately, what you've been focused on. and sort of see where that led you and then think about, yeah, how to adjust your plans, your values for the 6 months ahead. There's a sort of charmingness to this signature that I really like, and there's a confidence to it too. You might be feeling really good right now, Cancer. Not just confident and charming, but sort of fun and lively and a little joyful too. This is a fun lunation, although with a Leo signature, things can sort of tend toward the drama a little bit, tend towards the dramatic, I should say. And that might be because some of this might sort of tie back to a common full moon in Leo theme, which relates to sort of visibility or recognition. That might be something, Cancer, that you have really valued in the past, being appreciated, being seen, being recognized. That might have helped you to be that confident, charming, joyful self that you can be sometimes. And maybe it can be part of why the dramatic side comes out too on occasion. Full moon is a time to sort of think about that, to think about that sort of blend of approval versus self expression. What matters most is really being yourself, doing what matters most to you, showing up in the world authentically. The approval, the recognition, the visibility might be taking a little bit more of a back seat in your mind now for some reason. Maybe connected to everything that's going on at work, but perhaps in some other ways too, Cancer. Full moon might just be a nice moment to sort of notice all that. I also want to talk about Uranus going direct here on February 3rd in your 11th house, Cancer, related to friends and groups. February really is such an incredible month astrologically. We haven't even gotten to the eclipses yet or the Saturn Neptune conjunction. And even just on this first chart, I've talked about a full moon and two outer planets. So Uranus is working through just the final degrees here of Taurus. Uranus has been working through this part of the chart since 2018. This month, some squares will be coming in from the eighth house. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just want to talk about Uranus direct here through these final degrees. Uranus will re enter Gemini in April. So these next couple months are a great opportunity to sort of wrap up the work here. Uranus tends to bring change, and often it's the kind of change that we can't really see coming. Have you had some changes since 2018 to friendships or groups that you're associated with? Or it could be that those people or those groups have really gone through a lot. So, in other words, you might have a friend who's really been having a very difficult time for a few years or just having a lot of changes and surprises, and you've been a big part of supporting that friend. That's been a part of your life. Sometimes we care about people so much that their stuff can sort of show up in our charts. But, Uranus was working through this part of the chart for so long that you probably experienced multiple sort of potentials of this transit. And in fact, here in February, it's a great time to sort of review all you've learned, reflect, and think back on what's changed in this part of your life. You may even be doing a little bit of sort of reassigning of value, sort of updating value based on where you are now. Things have changed here in recent years, and we're sort of wrapping up this transit here in 2026. So, how do you sort of feel differently about these groups and these friends that you have? How much time and energy do you want to invest in different people and groups in the year ahead, Cancer? Think that this Uranus transit sort of really gets off the ground, this Uranus direct, as it begins to make these squares to the planets over in Aquarius. And I always like to talk about Uranus transits, even in a super busy month with eclipses and Mercury retrogrades and all these other things. I like to take a minute to talk about Uranus squares, especially when they're so prominent, sort of in a series like this. The Mercury will go through it, then Venus, then the Sun, then Mars. And with Pluto here in Aquarius too, it's a little extra exciting. But I always like to talk about Uranus aspects because they can be a little bit surprising. And I think that that's one of the nice benefits of astrology. We get a little bit of a heads up potentially. And then when those surprises come through, you're sort of a little bit more ready for it. And this is nothing major here, especially with it falling in your 8th and 11th houses, Cancer. I like that these squares aren't on the angles for you, but there's still a few things I want to talk about. So we're still talking about your 11th related to friends and groups. And then your 8th house is sort of about inner transformation and wisdom and shared resources can show up in the 8th house, like a spouse's income, for example, or sometimes I'll see like inheritance or things like that in the 8th. Any of these themes could be sort of triggered by a transit like this. This transit could signify they'll be sort of highlighted. Okay, so this Mercury square to Uranus that's coming in around the 5th could bring with it some sort of sudden news or information. Mercury is that mental process, the news, the information, and Uranus is bringing the sudden. And this can come from sort of outside of you, like something unexpected landing in some kind of way. Uranus's motto is frustratingly expect the unexpected. Or it could be sort of some information and some news almost coming up from within, especially with it falling in these 8th and 11th houses for you, Cancer. Like your narrative is changing, your personal narrative, maybe your narrative about friends and groups you belong to, or your inner transformation and wisdom, or just your life in general. In some way or another, there could be sort of a sharp mental pivot around this time that's a bit noticeable. It could come as a result of learning some sort of surprising truth, and that's not necessarily something that happens out in the world. It could just be that you're ready for that thought to sort of arise from within. So pay attention to what news and information is coming up for you around this time, Cancer. And also, I think it's good to think about the fact that a couple of days later, Venus will come into a square with Uranus here. This signifies that there could be some sort of shifting dynamics, some shifting relationship dynamics around this time, Cancer, especially related to friends and groups that you belong to. It's because what you want, what you desire is changing, has changed in the past, and probably is continuing to as these planets move through these parts of the chart. You know, we really are in this new era. Pluto here in Aquarius, Uranus wrapping it up in Taurus. What feels right for you now, what you want, might really be different than it was 10 years ago, let's say. The relationship dynamics that can sort of shift and pivot along with that will keep moving into this new era. Either way, the dynamics might shift a little bit in your relationships just because you've shifted. This could even be a time where you're sort of realizing that something isn't aligned anymore. And that's okay. How can you sort of adjust the dynamics in order to make it work? It might just be less time or a different kind of energy in the relationships, perhaps, or in the way you interact with these groups. This is a great transit for sort of redefining values, Cancer. Again, it's just such a great month to be sort of a little bit open to what's new and what's changing, to listen to your inner voice, to honor the messages and the truth that you receive that you know, and at the same time, to not go too far into that Leo drama side, since we're still in the lunation of that Leo full moon. Take it easy. It doesn't have to be about big, bold moves here. Sometimes sudden shifts are even more powerful. I think that the redefining of values and sort of subtle shifts in relationship dynamics are pretty powerful moves that tend to have ripple effects and echoes throughout the chart. This is a time where we're sort of laying some groundwork in general that will have more long term effects than usual. So that's sort of something to keep in mind as well as we move through this winter and this astrology report, Cancer. So, Cancer, once these planets move through the Aquarius part of the chart, they shift into Pisces. And as they do that, they come into a conjunction with the North Node. This is really a gorgeous sequence. It feels really emotionally intelligent and sort of soulful, like we might be realigning with our purpose and direction in a new way. And I love that this sequence unfolds right after the squares to Uranus. I'm also really excited to talk about Saturn entering Aries here as we get towards the middle of the month. But before we get there, let's just talk quickly about Mercury conjunct the North Node. This transit is exact on February 12th, and for you, it will fall in your ninth house. The ninth house is all about your ideas, your beliefs, sort of the way you see the world. Themes around travel can show up here. We learn so much about the world from travel. And education themes can show up here, philosophy, your personal philosophy. This could be a time where you have some sort of meaningful conversations, some interactions with others that mean more than is immediately obvious. Sometimes we talk with someone and it just gives us a fresh perspective. Or it could even be that an interaction with someone else brings something to the surface that you've thought about before, but you're just sort of hearing it at the right time from the right person now. You know how that is? Sometimes it's just the right timing. And you might think, oh, something about you saying that to me right now, it's just hitting different. Pay attention to the conversations that you have at this time. They might be especially significant. They might deepen your emotional understanding of yourself and of others, Cancer. This is a really nice transit. I'm a little distracted though, because as we get into the middle of the month, I just start to think about Saturn entering Aries and this eclipse. So let's start to talk about all of that now. On February 13th, Saturn will enter Aries and your 10th house related to work, career, and public image. You can see on this chart that Saturn is still in the ninth house. But on February 13th, it will shift over into Aries and basically into an immediate conjunction with Neptune. But that conjunction won't perfect until the 20th, and we'll talk about that too for sure. But I think since Saturn will be in Aries until April of 2028, that we should talk about sort of this Saturn in Aries signature all by itself too. This is the beginning of a new cycle for Saturn, right? We're at the 0 degree point of Aries. It's not just a new sign, it's the very beginning of the zodiac. So, sort of doubling down on the beginning themes for you when it comes to work. And Saturn sort of signifies a certain seriousness to these beginnings. You actually might be taking yourself and what you want more seriously at work now than you ever have before, Cancer. There is a certain responsibility, maturity, authority to this kind of signature. It's like things are carrying a new weight now that Saturn is in Aries. And you might just be stepping into a greater sense of self authority as a result, Cancer. You're ready for this. You might be a little extra busy at work once Saturn shifts in here, but you're getting a lot done. You're making a lot of progress. Sometimes people can sort of fear Saturn moving into a part of the chart because they know they're going to get a lot of work done. But I don't think that's a bad thing at all. You're going to get a lot of work done here. And we have to have Saturn somewhere. So to be making that progress in career and work, could be quite nice. Also, keeping in mind that this astrology signifies potentials, right? What's most important is what we actually do every day. We want to stay positive, stay hopeful, and most importantly, keep moving towards our goals, doing everything we can on our end. This astrology does suggest some potential for some sort of serious new starts. There's some really interesting unfoldings in the work and career part of your chart. Maybe not right away here in February, but over the course of the next couple of years. And the fact that Neptune is here at the same time is really significant and really important. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the Aquarius solar eclipse that occurs on February 17th. This chart might not look quite as exciting as it is. We have a solar eclipse in Aquarius, the first in the Aquarius Leo series here depicted, and that occurs on February 17th. In this chart, the moon has actually already shifted over into Pisces, but before it does that, when it meets up with the sun at that final degree of Aquarius, we have this solar eclipse. But you can see that the nodes haven't even shifted into Leo and Aquarius yet. They're still in Pisces Virgo here. So this is an off sign eclipse. And again, it's the first in a series of eclipses that will unfold in these parts of the chart over the next couple of years. For you, this full moon eclipse is falling in that eighth house, which we talked about a little earlier, connected to shared resources, transformation, and wisdom. The eighth house is so interesting. Everything from taxes to deep inner transformation work can show up here. But it's about the way we change, sort of as a result of the things we gain from others. Perhaps that's connected to shared resources. If you're with a spouse, their income might have an effect on your life, but also people that you meet, ideas that you share, experiences that you have. They're what really transform you. And those experiences are what builds real wisdom. So again, this is sort of a preview eclipse. We will be having eclipses in these parts of the chart, Aquarius and Leo, from 2026 through 2027. Second in this series will actually be in Virgo on March 3rd. We'll talk about that in the March reports. But this is a good eclipse for sort of paying attention because it will be a series over the next couple of years. So you might get some little previews, some little hints of what this story might be about for you, Cancer. This is a theme that's been coming up for a while with you, sort of redefining yourself in some kind of way, redefining your individuality, redefining what it really means to be you now. I think that there have been a lot of changes lately, and those social roles that you play, they are continuing to change now. And that is sort of helping you step into your individuality in a different way. Aquarius energy sort of doesn't even try to fit in. You're fine being an individual, you're fine going your own way. And it might be with that energy a little bit that some sort of reforming of old systems is starting to occur now as a result of all you've learned, as a result of these new potentials that you're starting to tap into. There's also something just very sort of future oriented about this energy. We have the eclipses starting here, but also Pluto is in Aquarius now. So that just taps into everything that's shifting and happening with the outer planets as they move into new signs, as we move into that energy of air and fire rather than water and earth. Things really kind of quicken, Cancer. And we're thinking more about the future than we are about the past. It's a good time to feel like the best days of your life are ahead of you, not behind you. To bring that kind of positivity to what you're doing because we are planting so many seeds now. And even though we're sort of in an off sign eclipse and it's angular houses, I do think that this could just be a busy time for you, Cancer, for all of us. Second half of February is really busy, basically from the time of this eclipse until like mid-March. And I think it can be helpful to have a heads up about that so that we can sort of meet the challenge of the busyness, also with a little bit of an understanding of when it will let up. I would say mid-March. Okay, but while we're still talking about this eclipse, there's something else I want to bring into it. So we've been talking about how as the planets leave the sign of Aquarius, they come into a square with Uranus. And that's true for the moon and the sun at the time of this eclipse as well. They're squaring Uranus. So let's talk about that because that adds sort of a bit of a layer to the analysis of this eclipse, Cancer. So as we're getting used to in this report, we can count on Uranus to bring in some surprises. So there could be some sort of surprising developments around this time as well. I should mention that the 11th house is related to friends and groups. We've spent a lot of time here, but make sure to put that on the chart too. Again, any and all of the themes connected to these parts of the chart could come in for you. And if you have planets and points near the places of these aspects as well, that would be significant. And really, when it comes to eclipses, we really do notice those house placements almost more than usual. It's great to track where the nodes are moving in your chart. It's very helpful. Okay, yeah, so some sudden developments in some kind of way can be the case when we're talking about Uranus, something surprising, something sort of quick. And, something that we haven't talked about yet with Aquarius, but that I think is really prominent is this sort of need with Aquarius energy to feel free. Aquarius energy doesn't like to feel constrained in any way. So you might be sort of eliminating constraints right now where you can. And with Uranus working here, that urge, that need to feel free could be kind of exaggerated too. And somehow that could be sort of directing your feelings or your actions at this time. There's potentially a restlessness here. Sort of makes this eclipse a little more exciting to have the square to Uranus here too. Do you think that this is a busy time, this second half of February? I'll say it again. And then just a couple of days later, on February 20th, the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries will be exact at the Aries point, the 0 degree point, the very first sign, the very first degree of the zodiac in the very first sign of the zodiac. And as you know by now, this is falling in your 10th house related to work, career, and public image. I did a really long video about this with my friend Corinne. It's over an hour long, and I think it's my favorite video I've ever done. So I will attach that at the end of this video as an end screen, and you can also find it on my channel. I would recommend watching that, Cancer, but I'll do just a brief sort of few key words here as well, and we'll continue to talk about this transit as it unfolds too. So, Neptune is about dreams, about fantasies, about that sort of loosening of the boundaries. And then Saturn brings in responsibility, maturity, authority. It sort of makes it real. So, this is a really interesting combination of energies. There's the potential, at least, for dreams to sort of land in our tangible experience at this time, for things that once only felt like dreams to actually become real. But what's crazy about Neptune, and very frustrating as well, and Corinne and I discussed this too, is that the opposite is also true. Things that feel real might actually be fantasies. So you want to be really, really discerning when this strong Neptune energy is involved. You want to kind of lean into and trust things that have already earned your trust, and people as well. Something new that's starting now or a new person that's coming in now deserves a little extra sort of scrutinizing. No matter what, though, a new reality in one way or another is sort of starting to take shape with a transit like this. There are a range of new possibilities available. And again, with it falling during an eclipse cycle, right in the eclipse window between eclipses, I just expect late February to be very, very busy for individuals and probably also in the collective. Just a lot sort of happening and moving and changing in the world. And that could give us a little bit of a sense of what some of these transits will be like as they continue to unfold this next couple of years with Saturn, and this next handful of years with Neptune until 2038. But also, sometimes when a transit like this gets off the ground, the initiation can be a little rocky. Sometimes, especially with Neptune, but Saturn too. It's like there has to be sort of a burning off at first. Something has to be released first or let go first. So, if for some reason there is something a bit rocky around that time, just know that that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to feel like that for the remainder of this cycle. Sometimes that just happens at the beginning. I think all of this is exciting for you professionally, Cancer. I definitely have high hopes about it for you. Definitely prepare to be busy at work though this winter. I think that's possible. I also want to talk about the Mercury retrograde that begins at the end of the month. This Mercury retrograde is falling entirely in the sign of Pisces, and it will occur from February 26th through March 20th, Cancer. I often notice a Mercury retrograde at the very beginning around that station, and at the very end of the Mercury retrograde around the station direct. So that's why I wanted to mention it here, although I will also do so in the March report most likely, especially because we're also in an eclipse window here. So the Mercury retrogrades are falling in water signs this year. In 2025, they were in fire signs, and this is the first in that new series. Pisces rules your ninth house, related to your ideas, beliefs, themes around travel and education can show up here. Sometimes there can be delays with a Mercury retrograde, and when it falls in your ninth house related to travel, I definitely feel compelled to mention that. But sometimes I think Mercury retrograde in Pisces is a little bit different. There can be the classic sort of misunderstandings theme, but often it really sort of comes as a result of getting these mixed signals. It makes me think about that symbol for Pisces and the two fish swimming in different directions. That's how a Mercury retrograde can feel, like a little confusing, like you're getting messages that contradict even. And that can lead to misunderstandings, of course. It can also just sort of mean that you need a little bit of time to process. What's going on with your ideas and your beliefs right now might be a little complicated, and this Pisces retrograde is sort of providing the opportunity to slow down a little, to have a little time for reflection and process. I feel like this is a good reminder during that eclipse window to not commit to anything too firmly. Pay attention to what comes in and out, but sort of stay a little loose too. It's a good time to reflect and process, not necessarily to make the firmest of decisions, more just to be paying attention to what's starting to unfold. Just sort of at the end of February in general, I mean, Cancer. There's also something about a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, especially in your ninth house, where there's sort of the opportunity to reconnect with your intuition in a different way, especially with strong water sign work in your chart, signature in your chart. This sort of goes well for you, Cancer. It's a good time to pay attention not just to what you think about your beliefs and your ideas, about your philosophy, about the world, but what you feel about them too. Of course, we want to vet everything with logic, but intuition is valuable as well. And this is a good time to kind of be reminded of that, I think, Cancer. There's a little bit of a challenging Mars square to Uranus that comes in around this time too, around the 27th. Mars is the final planet to move through that square that we've been talking about all month. And Mars square Uranus can be a little bit challenging. We've got the house related to friends and groups here, and also the house related to shared resources, wisdom, and transformation. Mars square Uranus can be a little bit explosive. The energy can be a little bit explosive. It's a time where something that is challenging, like a conflict or something, can really escalate quickly. And that's really a big part of why I wanted to give the heads up about it in this report. And we always want to be on the lookout for these things in ourselves and in others, right? You might notice it sort of both places. Using this energy more productively, staying on sort of the more higher potential of this signature might mean being a bit courageous. Maybe taking a move that feels a little bit risky, but very exciting, sort of having the courage to do that. With these squares falling in non angular houses for you, Cancer, I don't think it will be as significant for you as it could be or as it might be for others. These squares, I mean. But I still think it's good to have a heads up. There's also a lovely Venus Mercury conjunction on the very last day of the month on February 28th, Cancer. This is falling in that ninth house that's been quite activated this month, related to your ideas, your beliefs, the way you see the world, travel. So Mercury is retrograde here and conjuncting Venus. This is a nice transit. It's great for talking about emotions. Words can sort of really heal or soothe at this time. And I think it's interesting that this is going on at the same time as that Mars Uranus square. It's better to lean in the direction of these energies, lean into those gentle conversations that are possible with Mercury conjunct Venus rather than that sort of quick escalating conflict energy that can be present with Mars square Uranus. Both potentials are sort of here at the same time as I look at this final chart. And I guess that's not surprising because February really has been such a dynamic month, you know? And the end of February is so busy being in the eclipse window and having that Saturn Neptune conjunction. So there are multiple potentials available, and I guess that shouldn't be surprising. I think that overall this is a very exciting month, Cancer, and I think that March will be as well. If you enjoyed this video, you would probably enjoy the podcast that I host on YouTube live twice a week. It's a fun chance to talk about this astrology just as it's actually unfolding. And I will also be back in March with another report as we wrap up this eclipse season. So thank you so much for watching today, Cancer. Have an amazing February 2026.